I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
If you guys are members of our Patreon, you heard our February bonus episode that our significant others did where they didn't know how to start. They're like, oh, I guess we're supposed to have an intro. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
it
they
was
just
pretty funny.
got right into it. I mean, there was no like chat. Okay, here is our script. Let me tell you about it.
Well, it was funny too, because beforehand, Kevin was like, this will be interesting because I'm not sure what Andrew and I have talked about in life besides sports. Or like, so he was like, I don't really know. Like, that's just kind of what we talk. That's like what I talk about all the time, or like certain stuff. But he was like, I don't know.
He's like, oh, we're gonna have to like have a conversation about something other than sports. Like, I don't know if I could do that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But they did thankfully go on to have, some conversation throughout. But I was laughing when I was editing and I was like, oh, 36 seconds in and we're starting with the sources. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, him being like, Jacqueline told me I have to read the sources. Oh, it was funny. It was pretty funny. Yeah. If you want to sign up for nothing besides that, $3 a month, and you'll get a lot more than just that one.
Yeah, but I think that one alone is worth it. I mean, it was pretty good. I think the content was pretty interesting, and then the delivery was just a masterpiece. So
too good.
Also, because Courtney and I had this conversation off mic before we started, I want to know if you guys often read books that you forget about, because Courtney and I have both had this experience before where we've like started reading a book and then so far into it realized that, oh, we've already read this, or before I've gotten to like literally the last chapter and then I'm like, oh yeah, I've read this before and had no memory of it, which for me is easier now because I have Goodreads, so I can like check and make sure that I haven't read a book before, but like you were saying, like when you read so many books, it's like you just you forget what's what, and it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, because Tiffany let me borrow a book, and I was like, no, I haven't read it. No, let me read it. I think it's been on my list to read. And then, I mean, I wasn't that far in. Like, something about the names just really, like, triggered it for me, maybe, like, or the relationships. I don't know. I was maybe a chapter in, and I was like, this just feels familiar. So I looked on Goodreads, and yep, I read it 2 years ago, which as someone who reads usually over 60 books a year, that's 120 books since then. So it's not shocking that I forgot that I'd read it.
Yeah. And I told Courtney about a TikTok that I saw recently that was like me after finishing a book, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the best book like I've ever read. Like, the characters are amazing, the plot is wonderful, like the ending was great, blah blah blah. And then it's like 5 minutes later, someone's like, what was the name of that character in that book? And you're like, I have no idea.
No clue. Don't remember.
It's like once you start the next book, it's like, whoop, gone.
And that's the thing hard too. Like this one, it was like Behind Closed Doors, which is like a thriller, which like so many thrillers have these like similar names. With like a door or like
and similar
woman
like
in somewhere, and like yeah, they're all like very similar. So it was just one of those that I thought I hadn't read, but I had. Oops.
Like I can usually remember if I liked a book or not, like once, as long as I remember that I've read it. Like I can usually remember like, oh yeah, I really liked that, or oh, it was okay, or no, I didn't. But then like the details, I'm like, man, I don't know. What did I like about it? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. I remember it was good.
Yeah.
And of course you have the few that like really stick out to you. They're like, oh yeah, like this was amazing, like for these reasons. And, but I do, Courtney, I don't know if we've talked about this before. Do you reread books on purpose?
Sometimes. Like I will, like if I remember it being like really good and like want to reread it, like I will.
Yeah.
And I have in the past. It's kind of rare, mostly because there are so many books out there now.
Yeah.
That I'm wanting to read, but there are a few books that like I will read multiple times.
Yeah, same. I haven't in a long time, probably since I got the Libby app where I can get a brand new book at my fingertips. Like it would be one thing if it's like, oh, I've read all the books that like I own that I haven't, I don't want to go out and buy a new book, and I don't have time to go to the library today, so I'll just start rereading something I already have, and then once I started, obviously I'll want to finish it again. But I think it's been a while since I've reread something, because I am able to find a new book like instantaneously. Although I will say if I'm like in like a depressive mood, like if things are like not going great, like sometimes it's nice to have a comfort read of something that like you know exactly what's going to happen. So I will do it in those instances too.
I used to always like reread the Harry Potter series like every few years, or if I was going through something hard. Yes, I know J.K. Rowling is the absolute worst human to ever exist. And I do not support her, but Harry Potter is its own entity now, so please don't come for me in the comments. I hate her. I acknowledge it, but that is a series I would reread often. And there's a few others. One that just like stands out to me is like Eat, Pray, Love by Liz Gilbert. I don't know why, but I just really like that book and I love her writing style. So it was one that I would read like a few times, but it's been a while, but I did plan on it probably this summer, rereading one because I'm going to the beach and I'm going to need a lot of books. So here to reread in there might be a good thing.
Nice. I am excited to like reread some of those like older child, young adult, you know what I mean? Like not the like kid books, but like once you get into like chapter books, like once my daughter gets older and we're like, you know, reading those books like together, I'm looking forward to that because I think that'll be fun too.
I'm really looking forward to rereading Gone Girl. It's on my list to reread because it was so good the first time. And I'm excited to like read it again to like pick out some stuff, which is I feel like another thing like I've done before. Like if there's a big twist, I will reread it to like find clues that I missed the first time.
Yeah, I've done that before too. All right, well, this took a nice little, you know,
little
side
detour.
Yeah, you never know where the conversation's going to go, but yeah, let us know what you guys think about you know, forgetting that you've read books or rereading books that you've already read or, you know, whatever. We're always here for whatever conversation. So definitely, you know, reach
especially
out.
about books.
Yes, always about books. So another school shooting update again. So 43-year-old Anthony Dwayne McRae shot and killed 3 students and wounded 5 others at Michigan State University. So after the shooting, a citizen did see the news coverage and led police to McRae, who just appeared to be like casually walking home. And when he saw the police, he said nothing before shooting himself. They did find 2 legally purchased handguns on him, with lots of ammunition, a bus ticket, and a note listing several more potential targets, 2 of which were schools in New Jersey. And his note also stated that he was the leader of a group of 20 killers, and he had worked at one of the potential targets. So it did seem that like the places like on his list were like businesses where he had like been slighted or like asked to leave before, like places that he had like a vendetta against. And he had previously been charged with carrying a concealed weapon, which is a felony and would have prevented him from being able to purchase another gun if he was convicted. But he pled guilty to a misdemeanor instead, which is how he was able to purchase the guns that he used in this shooting, which we saw with the UVA shooting as well from 2020. Yes.
2022. Sorry.
Was it? There was an update last year, but was the shooting last year? Yep, that was last year. Okay.
Sorry. In my head, I was saying 2022, but then I was like, wait. We said
that's not what came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but literally the exact same situation with the UVA shooting that this person had previously been charged with what would have been a felony and would have prevented him from purchasing a gun, but it was pled down to a misdemeanor, which allowed him to go on and, again, use these legally purchased guns for this shooting. So
you say that it said he was like in his note, he was a leader of a group of 20 killers. Have they found anyone else like in association, or is that just like ramblings?
That not that I've found. I haven't like dug too deep into it, but like the sources that I did look at, I didn't see anything that mentioned it seemed like he was just a lone wolf and was probably just bullshitting because, you know. So yeah, so not that I've seen. But the students that were murdered were 19-year-old Ariel Anderson, 20-year-old Brian Frazier, and 20-year-old Alexandria Werner. And the names of those that were wounded have not been released at the time of this recording. So again, just another tragedy that literally nothing is going to come from because no one is ever going to agree to change the gun laws in this country. Even though, as we've said multiple times, most of these are legally purchased. I don't know why.
Did you see like when it was happening, like before they found him, how people were sharing like the person on Twitter, and the guy was like, guys, this is me. I'm at home. It was like a different state. And he was like,
Oh my
please stop sharing
gosh.
this because like I'm not there. And like people were sharing a
Yeah.
photo like of this person. It was not that
Oh,
person,
geez. Yeah, no, I did not see
basically.
that.
And that was happening like before we knew who it
Yeah.
was, like when everything was still on lockdown and stuff. And the guy was like, please stop. Like, I'm very scared for my safety right
Mm.
now because you're sharing my picture
Yeah.
and it's not me.
Oh my gosh, that's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of horrifying,
Mm.
this case,
Yeah.
pretty, pretty horrifying.
Mm.
Um, I guess we'll just get right into it. So our sources were the new Unsolved Mysteries series. The episode was No Ride Home. The FBI website, the NPR in Kansas City, like their site, and an NBC News article. So Alonzo Brooks was born on May 19th, 1980 to Billy Brooks Sr. and Maria Ramirez. So he was one of 5 children, and there were 2 boys and 3 girls, and he was one of the younger kids. So like growing up, he would always be like really upset because half the time like his siblings went somewhere and he couldn't go because he was just so much younger. I think he was kind of like a surprise child like later in life. And so he was like, I want to go here. And they're like, you can't do that. You're too young.
He's like, what do you mean I'm 4 and I want to hang out with a 16-year-old? That's fine, right?
Yeah, it's fine. I can go there. So he was very close with his mom, and they had a really tight, strong relationship. His family said he was always kind, polite, playful, and sweet. He was very loving and fun. His favorite color was red, and he would usually be wearing black or red, and he frequently wore a beanie as well. And a lot of people in his life would call him Zoe. He grew up in Topeka, Kansas, but eventually moved to Gardner, Kansas with his mom. So Topeka is more kind of urban, like it's more of a city. But Gardner was a little bit slower, kind of more suburbia, a little bit different than where he'd been raised. On April 3rd, 2004, Alonzo said he was going to a party. There was a guy he knew who was going into the service, and they were all just going to go to this party before he left. Alonzo said he was going with his friend Justin Sprague. So Justin said he doesn't really remember like how they learned about the party. Like it wasn't something that had been planned weeks in advance. The group just didn't really plan anything. They would just kind of decide in the moment. It's like, hey, there's a party, we're going to go, like you do when you're young, you know?
Yeah, like every teenage boy ever. Like,
Yeah. So another friend, Daniel Foon, said all he really remembered was someone calling and saying they should all go to the party. And Tyler Brogard said they called and figured out who was there and just like headed to the party. So it was like they all just kind of call each other and they all just kind of go to this party. Just kind of what they did. So Alonzo didn't really go to many of the parties around this time. He was a little bit older than the other friends. Like he was 23 years old at this time. And then like the friends were a little bit younger, probably more like 18, 19. So one of Alonzo's younger brothers, Trey, was friends with some of their younger siblings. So kind of that's how they all kind of knew each other. Alonzo met a lot of his friends in football, and he was really great at football. And his friends said he was like really easy to get along with. They said he'd be like throwing you in the dirt playing football, and then just sit down and have like a long, deep conversation with you. And before they left for the party, Alonzo fixed his socks, and he did usually wear like 2 pairs of socks. And he'd rolled it down to like tie his boot a little tighter because he had hurt his ankle the week before playing basketball. So he was still limping a little bit from this like sprain or injury. And he did have on blue jeans, a t-shirt, a sweater, and a skull hat. And Alonzo had been planning to ride with Justin to the party. And the party was in Cygne, Kansas. Justin said they'd not heard of Cygne before that. It's a very, very small town. And when they got to the party, there was just kind of this long driveway to the house, like just kind of your normal like country driveway next to a creek in the middle of nowhere, like what everyone thinks the country looks like. It's what it looked like.
yeah, exactly.
And there were probably around 30 to 50 people at this party. So when they showed up, Alonzo just shouted, "Who wants a beer?" And that's just kind of how they started interacting with everyone. He was like, "I'll do this icebreaker. I'll give people a beer and then we'll make friends." Perfect.
There you go. It's the way to do it.
And people at this party were probably around 16 to 21, so a younger crowd. People were playing flip cup, playing different drinking games. Some people were dancing, some were playing cards, just your typical teenage house party, basically. And a lot of the friend group said they didn't know many of the people there, and they were a bit more country than them and a little bit different. And they're like, okay, we know Gardner's a little bit more suburbia, but this is even like a step further from what we're used to. But they all still seemed to be having a good time. And his friends said that he seemed to be in a good mood and was being like very outgoing, enjoying himself. And usually he was a little bit like more reserved and quiet, but just seemed like tonight he was just having like a really good time. However, at one point in the night, Alonzo did have a little bit of a fight with another guy at the party. And Alonzo and the guy were face to face at one point, and one of his friends like split them up. In the documentary, they kind of mentioned like maybe like he was flirting with a girl or maybe looked at a girl and this guy got mad. Like no one really fully remembered what it was about, but you're drinking, you have all this teenage male testosterone. Fights like this were going to happen.
Yeah, all the time. And like actual fights and then like almost fights where you're like in each other's face and your friends are like, come on, man, like leave it alone, leave it alone. Yeah. Like, oh, whatever. Like literally all the time.
Yeah. And Alonzo really just tried to not let that ruin his night. So two of the friends they came with did get word of another party, and they left around 11 p.m. So Justin ended up leaving to go pick up some more cigarettes because him and Alonzo were both out. He left, and he ended up taking a wrong turn and got his car stuck. And he was actually about 30 minutes north of like where he should be. Like, yikes. This is 2004. We didn't have GPS on our phones. Like, he's never been there before. Like, he gets lost. So he did call another friend who was at the party and asked him to tell Alonzo like he'd gotten lost. And he could just hear Alonzo in the background, like talking shit, poking fun at him. Like, you got lost. Like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah.
So Justin was like, look, I'm not going to make it back. And he asked Adam, who was the friend at the party, to give Alonzo a ride home. So on April 4th, Maria, who is Alonzo's mom, gets a phone call asking if Alonzo's home. So she went into his room and noticed he wasn't there. So she started yelling around the house to see if he was in the basement or something. So she returned to the caller and was like, no, like he's not here. Like, where is he? Like, do you know where he is? And the caller just kind of said, maybe he spent the night somewhere else. And Maria's like, no, that's not really like him. Like, he always comes home. Like, and I get it. Like, I'm one of those people. Like, if I have the option to go home, even if it's like 4 a.m., like, I'm going home. Like, yeah, like, I'm not staying.
No, I'd rather sleep in my own bed. Thank you.
Yeah. So she started to call his friends and just kind of see where he's at. So Daniel, Tyler, and Justin had all last seen him at the party. And they also agreed. They're like, yeah, he would have come home. He's not going to stay there. Or if something happened, like he would have at least called. Like he's not going to stay and just like not tell anyone where he is. So Justin did mention how Adam was supposed to give him a ride home, but I guess something happened and they missed each other. Justin wasn't sure of the exact details on how Alonzo didn't ride back with Adam. And I couldn't find anything else about this, like why he didn't ride home with Adam, what happened, the conversation, if maybe Adam was leaving and Alonzo was like, I'm staying, or if he just left. Like, there's no details out there really about what else happened about this ride.
Yeah, like, was it just a miscommunication where like he didn't realize he was supposed to be taking him home? Or, like you said, like 2004, like there's not like, I mean, there were cell phones, but especially at this age, like I wouldn't say most people had them. And so, who knows how information was passed, through to everyone involved, and who knows what could have happened.
Yeah. So Rodney English was Alonzo's childhood best friend. They'd actually lived next to each other in Topeka. So after Alonzo didn't come home, Maria called Rodney, like asking if she'd heard from him. And he thought it was very odd that like he wasn't with the friends he went with. He was like, how do you go to a party and you don't come home with your friend? Like, yeah, what's happening? So he did end up traveling to Gardner to start looking for him. So Justin did come along to show them like where the party was at. So they all drove down to Cygne together to kind of see everything. So once they got there, they like got out and started looking, like just trying to look around the property. Like, did he get too drunk? Did he end up sleeping outside or something? Like, is he here in the house? Like, where is he? So they ended up crossing the street from the house, and Rodney did find his hat and a boot. And then they were able to find the other boot a little further down on the side of a creek bank. And they weren't hidden. It was just kind of tossed along. Like Rodney was like, it was almost like someone's driving and just like threw them out the window. Like it wasn't trying to hide something. So eventually a guy comes up on a four-wheeler and told them like they need to leave. So at that point, everyone's like, something's not right. Something's really not right. And Lacine is a prominently like white town, and many of his friends said it's like known to be like more racist since it is so small town, mostly white people, like all of that. And Alonzo was likely the only Black person at the party as well. So it was mostly probably all white kids. Like,
yeah.
So Rodney started talking to Justin, trying to figure out like why he took him to the party, didn't come home with him. Justin just said like when he was leaving, Alonzo was having a great time. Like, I don't know, like I went to get these cigarettes. He was having a good time. There was no signs of fighting, anything going on. However, you know, Daniel did tell the story of Alonzo and another guy at the party possibly getting into a fight, but maybe Justin just didn't see that or had forgotten about it because things did just blow over. But he was like, when I left, like there was nothing bad happening. Like everyone was just having a good time. So Maria went to the police station and they told her she had to wait 48 hours to call him missing. But she insisted he was missing now. This was not like her son. She knows her son. He's not going to just not come home or not call, anything like that. So Alonzo's brother and his wife ended up driving down on that Monday, the 5th, to Lacine to see if they could speak to the owners of the house. So they were able to get in touch with the owner, and he said the house was actually empty. So it was a rental house, and like there wasn't a current occupant, like the most recent occupants had been evicted or something. And they said it was very weird. It like looked so empty and didn't look like a place where there'd just been like this big party like a night before. Like it was really weird. They were like, it's very odd. And they tried to kind of drive around the town and they got like a lot of looks from the locals. Like they were like, every time everyone was looking at us like, why are you here? Like what? Like not welcoming, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So they had a meeting with the sheriff there and they were trying to make it clear, like, this is not Alonzo. This is very serious. He's not shown up. We've not heard from him. And the sheriff just bloated off saying he's probably just out walking around doing what kids do. Which I guess they just walk around.
After staying out all night, just walk around like you do. Okay.
Yeah. But they brought up, they were like, he had no shoes. We found his shoes. And it had been raining. So they're like, why is he walking around with no shoes and it's raining? And also, as we mentioned, he'd recently hurt his ankle. So they're like, he's limping. Why is he going to take his shoes off, walk around barefoot in April in the rain? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Nothing about this makes sense. So Paul Filla was a deputy at the time of Alonzo's disappearance. So Paul had gotten the information and was told to go to the house in Lacine. And he said that he did not see Alonzo there. So they walked the creek bed. They didn't see any indication that he had been there. And he reported back negative contact and that he didn't see anyone in the area. So on April 7th, the case was turned over to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, or KBI, and they did a very extensive search. So KBI's evidence recovery team came down and investigated the creek beds. They used cadaver dogs and also did an aerial view of the area with a helicopter. And the FBI also joined in the search team as well. So at this point, investigators are wondering like if this was a hate crime because there were reports that Alonzo was threatened and the target of racial slurs. Again, we mentioned he was probably the only Black person at this party of a bunch of white people in a town that is known for being racist. It seems like a pretty good theory to go down.
Yeah.
So Lee's Summit Underwater Rescue and Dive Team were brought in on April 12th. So the water was about 3 feet deep at the deepest part. So they did have 3 guys in the creek and then 3 on the side walking and clearing brush. And they did not find anything to indicate that a body had been in the creek. So there were hundreds of interviews conducted by the KBI and FBI, and Justin said they just like kept coming back trying to get more information from the friends at the party. He said investigators kept saying like he just got drunk and took his shoes off and tried to walk home, and Justin's like, no, like that's complete bullshit. That's not what happened. He said that would just be out of his character, like in general. And also, like Courtney mentioned, like his ankle was still messed up from this basketball injury. Like he was like trying to fit his boot on very tightly to like keep it in place. Like he's not going to like take off his boot and socks and just walk around barefoot.
Yeah.
So a week and a half passed. And so like now the family is like, we know for sure that something has happened to him. Like clearly he's not just out wandering around still. he didn't just like walk down the highway or like stay at someone's house or something. Like something had happened to him, but they didn't know what. And the family just kept calling the police department like daily, trying to see if they'd heard anything. And the police actually told them like they needed to stop. Like they're like, we're working on things. Like just stop calling, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, how do you tell a family whose son is missing, like, just stop bothering us? Like, what?
Right. Like that's the thing is they're like, you need to stop calling us every day. And they're like, well, you're not telling us anything. So we're going to call every day for an update. But like most people, I feel like also, even if you're not into true crime, like you know how important those first few days are. Like even if you don't consume true crime, you're like, there's a show called 48 Hours. And like people like know the first little bit of finding someone is the most important. And you're also like, okay, if he is walking around like you claim, then he's also in danger of starving or running into a wild animal or getting hit by a car. Like something happened. Something is wrong.
Like it's not like he like set out on a hike and has all these supplies he needs. It's like, oh no, if he's gone for a long period of time, like he did not plan to be. So even if you don't think like there's foul play involved, like something is wrong with him and you need to help us.
Yeah.
So on May 1st, which was 27 days after Alonzo went missing, the police finally allowed the family to like go to the area and search for him. Because before they had like been refusing to allow the family to go down there. They're like, no, like you can't be here. Like we're working on it, supposedly. But finally, 27 days later, they're like, okay, like you guys can go search there if you want. So families spread the word to friends and tried to get a big group together, and a lot of people did want to participate. So they didn't really know what they were looking for, just like anything that could show like that Alonzo was there or like that something happened to him, anything they can find at this point. And so in one of the fields, there was a white shed that like is no longer there now. But at the time, a lot of the volunteers thought that that shed needed to be searched, and they were actually heading towards it when they found Alonzo's body. So they did the autopsy, and there were no penetrating injuries that would be the cause of death. So there was no evidence of any acute bone fractures, no sharp force injuries, gunshots. Like there was no way to see if he had been strangled, because the soft tissues of the neck were gone. So that's not something they could determine at that time. They also could not determine if he had drowned, but there were no specific anatomic signs like to make the determination one way or the other. So unfortunately, the medical examiner like could not say the cause of death or what the situation was surrounding his death, and the cause of death was classified as undetermined. But his family and friends like firmly believed that there was no accident and that this was foul play. Like, why would his boots and his hat be just like thrown off the highway if this was an accident? Like, they wouldn't be found away from his body if he had like wandered off and something crazy happened,
Yeah, and just like the fact that he's now found all these days later, and they're like, it's not like if he had died that night, he could just move his own body.
Yeah, exactly. So the internet like went crazy with like rumors and speculation on what happened. People said that it was an accident and a cover-up. Some said he was tortured, that his friends set him up to be a drug dealer. He was chased, just like tons and tons of rumors. And there was another rumor that there was a white girl at the party, that maybe they had been like flirting, and some of the other people there didn't like that. And his friends believed it's possible that like he got jumped or got into some kind of fight, at the party or leaving the party. But another strange part of this case is, why did no one find Alonzo's body before? So remember, there was the dive team, the KBI, and the FBI out searching this area and never came across him. But then his family comes along and they do a search and they find him in 30 minutes.
Yeah, like it's not like he was hidden at all. It's like, he was there. We found him literally in 30 minutes of our search.
Exactly, after 27 days. So the search and dive team said that his body was not there when they searched the area, that if it had been, they would have found it. The medical examiner did say it's possible that he had floated down the creek at a later time, like when the water rose. But his brother said when they found him, like he didn't look bloated, like his skin was like similar to his normal skin tone. Like I feel like if you've been in water for a long period of time, it's pretty obvious. Like even someone who's not a medical examiner that like has that knowledge can just like look at you and tell that you've been in water for a long time.
And that was the thing too, is like, I feel like that would come up in the autopsy. Like you would know what that looks like, especially because I don't mean to get too graphic, but like when a body's in water, like you have slippage, like your skin will literally like fall off. And like 27 days, it's like there would be obvious signs of, like,
Exactly. They also found his wallet and a few other things in his pocket, including his bandana, dice, and papers that were all relatively undamaged. So if he had been in the water for like a month, like how would this stuff just be so preserved?
Like it was shown on the documentary, like it was a piece of paper and it was like not even wet, barely. Like it was like you could
Wow.
still read it and
Yeah.
everything. So it's like, okay, it's been 27 days. He's been in the water. How is this piece of paper still like
Yeah. Like
legible?
that's not possible. So the family believed like it was possible that word got around that they were doing a search and that someone placed him there. His brother believed that maybe he was held in like a meat locker or something of that nature since the body like hadn't decomposed like too quickly. And the medical examiner said there's no way to prove or disprove that a body has been frozen if decomposition has already set in. He said like it's possible, like if the body is found like right as it's thawing, there could be like microscopic changes, but that's really it. And the medical examiner did say that his decomposition lined up with being in the creek for 30 days or less. But again, we don't really know how his body would not be like further decomposed and the items destroyed, like if he had been in the water for those full 30 days.
Yeah.
So in 2019, KBI released a statement regarding the Alonzo Brooks case. So they said that no evidence gained through the lengthy investigation indicated that Alonzo was the victim of a crime. And for this reason, the investigation into his death was closed. However, the Unsolved Mysteries episode caused another stir in the investigation. So Stephen McAllister, who was then the U.S. District Attorney, decided to take another look. So whenever Unsolved Mysteries reached out for information, he started reading up on the case, and he did request that the FBI reopen the case at that time. He said it seemed that the investigator just kind of like gave up, but there was also the fact that there had been some misconduct from the original medical examiner, Dr. Eric Mitchell. So Dr. Mitchell had said that he couldn't determine the cause of death, but his qualifications and testimony have come under question lately by local defense attorneys, mostly due to conduct that happened before, like he worked in Kansas. So there was an article from 1993 that said Dr. Mitchell routinely removed organs from corpses without consent of victims' families, and had been improperly storing body parts in his office.
I have a lot of questions about that I really don't want the answer to.
No. A lot of red flags, that's for sure.
Yes.
So after reopening the case, the FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for anyone who can provide information that leads to a conviction. So in July of 2020, the FBI exhumed Alonzo's body for a second autopsy. And in April of 2021, his death was reclassified as a homicide. So the new autopsy found injuries that were inconsistent with normal patterns of decomposition. So many of the details are not being like revealed for investigative purposes, but they did say, as of 2021, like this was a homicide.
Which shows again how the medical examiner something was going on there. If he's like, there's absolutely nothing. And then this new autopsy is like, yeah, there's signs here of like something happening.
Yeah. And I don't think it's enough time. I mean, it's a lengthy period of time as far as like updates to science, but I don't think it's long enough time that's like, oh, like it really wasn't like they wouldn't have known then. It's like this wasn't 100 years ago. This was like 15 years before. Yeah. So the new FBI lead agent on the case is Leanna Romana, and she hopes that new technology will turn up some possible old clues. And she's also hoping that with the passage of time, more witnesses will open up and talk more about what happened that night. Sometimes time and distance can like allow people who were scared before to, feel more comfortable coming forward. So hopefully, as more time passes and you're not a 16-year-old who is at that party who's terrified for your life, you'll start to realize that maybe you should talk about what happened and what you know.
Because I'm just so confused of like, and maybe it's just like not public knowledge for like if they interviewed other people at this party, but like the only testimony we have is like of his friends. And I'm like, what about all these other people who saw him? Like nobody could say they saw him leaving. Like no one could talk about him at all. And like, if this party, as they described, was all white people and you are in this very small town where you rarely see Black people, you're going to remember like seeing him at the party. Like you don't know him. Like
he's going to stand out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, how is no one at this party being like, well, I saw him doing this, or even like a made up lie of being like, oh, I saw him stumbling and fall down and blah, blah, blah. Like nobody can account for him. Like, after Justin calls and asks Adam to give him a ride home. Like, nobody can account for him or where he was or where he went.
That is interesting because I feel like in other similar cases that you do have those reports, like you said, of like, oh, they were getting into this, or I saw them getting into that, or and this case is just like, nothing, no information.
Because his friends and his family were interviewed in the documentary, but like none of them brought up hearing any other testimony from anyone seeing him. So it's just like, and the whole Adam thing to me, and I'm not saying I think Adam's responsible at all, but like, what is his story of like how did he went home without like I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, there's a lot here that's not very clear, and you know, some of that may be due to like, you know, investigative purposes, like they don't want to share too much information that they want to be able to keep hidden until it's a point where it's like not safe, but I'm not making any sense. You know what I'm getting at.
They're trying to hold like details like close so that like people won't like falsely come forward, kind of like with the new autopsy. But it's also just kind of crazy. It's like nobody there could be like, I don't know. It's just so weird to me.
Yeah, it really is. So Alonzo's father, Billy Brooks Sr., just recently died earlier this year. So unfortunately, he did have to die without ever knowing what happened to his son. So if you do have any information about this case, please call the FBI at 816-512-8200 or 816-474-TIPS. So you can also submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. So Alonzo was very possibly a victim of a racially motivated hate crime. The details of his death just do not add up. Like we said, there's so much missing information, so much that does not make sense about this. So please, if you know anything, please come forward so that the individual or individuals responsible for this will be held accountable. You hear this all the time, but like anything that, even if you don't think it's something like, if you were there, if you have any sort of information that you could possibly share, you know, please do, because you never know that one little thing that like that breaks the whole investigation, you know?
And that's the thing too. It's very odd to me because like the dive team had people in the water, which I think they said was like 3 feet deep at most. Like it wasn't this deep creek, but they also like said they have people on the side, like walking and pushing aside brush to look. And so I'm like, where was he that they didn't find him? Like he clearly wasn't there. Like,
and my question too is like, if the theory is right that the killer or killers found out that the family was going to be searching, so they put the body there, like why? Like what was their motive behind doing that? You know, was it just like, oh, well, we have to get rid of it, so like we'll just put it here? But also, like, wouldn't you not want the body to be found because like you could have evidence on the body that like implicates yourself? Like if that's really what happened, which sounds the most plausible to me, like you don't just like appear out of nowhere, you know. If the body was intentionally placed there because the search was going to be happening, like what was the motive behind doing that, you know?
Or even if maybe it wasn't necessarily intentional, because they did have like helicopters, the dive team, everything. So maybe after a week or so of it like being around there, a week or two, they were like, okay, now we can go like dump the body or something. You know what I mean? Like we can, but I don't know why you would dump it there so close to the party. Unless maybe you did want it found and you just thought it's been long enough, there's no evidence left. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't understand.
Or you think they're not going to search that area anymore because they already did. So like, oh, they've like extensively searched this area and they found nothing. So it's the perfect place to put the body because they're not going to come back and search again.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So that's what I wonder also, if they're like, okay, they've like, you know, laid off, like whatever, like let's go put it there.
Yeah.
And then the family comes and finds him. So I don't know if maybe it was that, or maybe they were like, maybe felt guilty and they were like, well, his family should know that he's at least like dead, like at least find his body. Like maybe you do feel guilty and you're like, well, let's at least give the family like quote unquote closure. Cause you know, people have like fucked up minds like that. Like, it's just an odd case.
It's like, so was it someone at the party who were a bunch of teenagers, or was it like, did he try to walk home because he wasn't able to get this ride and then something happened to him on the way home, like unrelated to this party?
But he would have barely made it anywhere because the creek was like on the property of the house. You know what I mean?
True,
so it was like so like he would have barely gotten down the road.
Yeah. But like we said, like his body could have been moved from somewhere else. So, I mean, he could have gotten a ways down the road, and then
That's true also.
for some reason, I mean, the killer knew that he was at that party, so we thought he would put him back near the party, or just because the search happened there.
Because it's weird too that his shoes were by the party too. So it's like, what is that all about? It's very odd. And is it also like these are a bunch of like teenagers, but you know, you call your weird uncle, your weird racist uncle, and you're like, there's this guy over here like flirting with the white women at the party. How dare they? And like him and his good old boys show up.
I can 100% see that for sure.
Yeah. So it's just like, who even knows what happened? And nobody's talking at all.
So many unanswered questions. Yeah.
And I hope the family gets closure, because it's just like something happened. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe it's just like victim of the elements, because how is his body not found? How, if it's in the water, is it not more decomposed?
Exactly. Like his body was put there. Like I fully believe that. I don't believe there's any way that like, oh, he just wandered away drunk and then somehow died and then was here the whole time and then no one found him during the first. Like, I believe. And
his body floats downstream, but his shoes are at the front of the house. Like none of that makes sense. Like I believe there was foul play, and I believe it was racially motivated.
Yeah.
100%.
Like even if there was some like bizarre accident, like his body was concealed and then brought back to this place. So such a tragic case all around. Yeah, okay. Well, this is an awkward transition as usual.
Always the most awkward transition.
It really is. Like we try to give you guys something like light to end on, so we're not just like stopping on these horrific deaths, but then it's also like, how do you transition from that to this and not feel like an insensitive asshole? But you know, we just want to give you guys a little light at the end to, you know, bring it up before we don't talk to you guys again for another week. So that being said, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
All right, so I'm pulling a double perk.
Oh, okay.
A double perk because I had a busy week. So I had two very fun things happen on the Monday of the week we recorded this. I got to see Death Cab for Cutie and also Mama, who opened from them, who I also like. So that was a very good show. It's a super fun night. They were really great in concert. It was really good. And then I also finally got to see Hamilton live, which literally the second the music started, I started crying because I'm obsessed with Hamilton. I love Hamilton. And it was just, I've watched the Disney Plus, like with the original cast, like probably like 10 times. I'm not even over exaggerating. Sometimes it's just the thing you put on to like, okay, I need something on the TV while I sit here. It's going to be that. And it just, it's not the same as seeing it live. Also because the Disney Plus, like they kind of zoom in on like whoever's singing. So like seeing the whole thing, it's just like so much time and thought is put into that show. Like it is fucking insane. Like the fact that they have a whole song. I don't think you've ever listened to Hamilton or watched Hamilton, but they have a whole song. And then the next song, it's like they reverse everything for someone else's point of view. And so it like rewinds, but like everyone on the stage is like doing exactly what they did the song before, like exactly the same.
That's cool.
So they're like doing it backwards and then doing it forwards, and just like all the background like dancers, like each person has like such a purpose, and like I don't know, it was amazing. This is my soapbox of how I don't know, like I love the Hamilton soundtrack and I love all of that, but like also seeing like how much thought is put into like every person on that stage and what they're doing and how it's gonna like, I don't know, it's incredible.
That's awesome.
That's my soapbox of how incredible it was. But that's my double perk of the week because I had a very busy week.
You did have a busy week.
But yeah, so that's my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that this week we got our deck built, which I'm just like so stoked about. As you guys know, we bought this house a couple months ago.
They did it very quickly.
Yeah, like they were like boom, boom, boom.
I was shocked.
Courtney's like, I don't know if I'm gonna walk on that. No.
I've seen so much construction around my house that takes literally these apartments back here have been being built since before we moved in 3 years ago.
Oh,
so whenever you got your
lovely.
deck done that quickly, I was like, I mean, obviously a deck versus like a
Yeah.
whole apartment complex, but still.
Well, they also like charged like they like did the estimate beforehand and like was a contract that's like this is what we're going to charge you and no more. So they're like, we want to get this done quickly because they're not.
My mom always says that. She says you
Mhm.
can tell when it's a job by the hour versus by the
Yep,
job. So
exactly.
if it's by the hour, they're gonna like draw it out as long as they can. If it's by the job, it's up like
They're
that.
like, all right, we're getting this knocked out and we're going to be out because I want to make as much money as possible. But I mean, they did have 4 people here for 3 full days. So, I mean, it was, which also I just have to add, I meant to text you about this and I forgot. So like no one ever like asked to use our bathroom, which like I expected because I'm like, oh, you have like people here working in your house for like 8-9 hours a day. And so I'm like, do they just like not? Are they like peeing in my backyard? Do they have like Gatorade bottles? Like I had so many questions.
They didn't like bring a porta potty with them either?
No.
They peed in your backyard 100%.
Oh yeah, but I'm like it just in broad daylight or like I mean, like I live in a neighborhood. It's not like it's like I mean, like we have trees, but it's not like it's like a wooded area where it's like, oh, you could easily, which like I don't care if they pee in my yard, like it's just pee. But I was just
maybe they're just like kind of trained where they're just like, okay, when we go to lunch, like that's when we'll go to the bathroom, and then when we go home.
Yeah,
like maybe
I mean maybe
they've like accustomed themselves to that. I don't know.
But like they also had like a ton of liquid, which I guess like you're also very physically exerting yourself. So like maybe you're not, you don't have as much like waste because you are using all the liquid you're consuming. But anyway, I was thinking about that because I was just like, where are they? So we bought this house like 2 months ago, and that was like the only thing that was missing from this house. So we're like, okay, we're gonna like make a plan to get this done as quickly as possible. And so it is up, and I'm so happy. And then Andrew had to get his. I don't know what it's called. It's like
a Blackstone.
Yeah, but I think it's the brand. So he didn't get that brand, but it's a different brand.
Oh, it's like the same Blackstone thing. Gotcha.
Yeah. So
I've only ever heard someone call it a Blackstone.
Yeah.
Like any TikTok video I've seen is like we're cooking it on the Blackstone. So I don't know if this is like Kleenex.
That's literally what I was about to say.
Yeah. A Kleenex, and it's the Walmart tissue paper.
Yes.
Like
maybe it's that situation. But yeah.
Or maybe all the people I see on TikTok are just bougie and have to have name brand. That could be it too.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the off brand's called.
That could be. Well, we have a Nexus, I think is what it's called, which also sounds like it's something else, so that may not be right. But it was on sale, so that's what we went with. But Andrew is very, very excited about it. As anyone who knows Andrew, he loves his cooking gadgets.
Yes, he does.
So he has used it the last 2 nights, and then tonight he was super excited to make breakfast on it because he's like, I can cook everything on it at one time and not dirty up 10,000 dishes. So that is what he did, and it was delicious, and he was very happy. But that was very long-winded. But yeah, we got our deck and I'm very excited. So I was able to sit out there during nap time yesterday, and it was still kind of cold, but like the sun was like right on me, so it was like acceptable, even though it was cold. So I got to sit out there and read my book and drink a cup of coffee and look at my Smoky Mountains from my backyard on my deck, and it was delightful. So
that sounds nice.
Yeah. And Courtney's going to come over soon. We're going to have a deck warming party instead of a house warming party. And we're just going to all hang out on the deck, and Andrew's going to cook. And
on the deck. The deck warming party.
Yes. Make sure and enunciate that very clearly, because or else you might think you're coming to a whole different kind of party.
I show up with all the dildos and I'm like, what? What do you mean?
Courtney's like, I'm very confused. I don't understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to tell us? Nope, if you
So not, I don't want to know. I support you 100% in any consensual sexual endeavor you were doing. Emphasis on the consensual. Don't want to hear about it.
Not even going to put that joke out there because I don't want the jokes to come in. Like the person that sent us the picture of the nipple belt. I could have gone my whole life without seeing that. So
I don't want it.
But yeah, reach out to us about other things on all the places. You guys know where to find us. It's in the show notes. Again, just to plug our patreon.com/caffeinated crimes. We do have 4 different tiers available. So the lowest one is $3 a month. And you guys get a bonus episode every single month. So we currently have, it's got to be almost 30, right? If it's not already.
Something, it's close to 30.
Yeah. We're coming up
26.
I'm pretty
27.
sure. When does this come out? I think this comes out the week of our 3-year anniversary.
Hold on one second. Oh, no.
Oh,
It was on my calendar last year. It's not on my calendar this year. I think it's next week because this comes out the 28th.
okay.
And I think it's like first week of March. Well, I don't know. Is it? I guess it depends on what day in March. I'm gonna have to fact check because I can't remember.
I know. I'm like, it's between like the 3rd and the 10th. I'm pretty sure. But
yeah. So if it's the 3rd, like this is the week of because this is like the Tuesday before.
okay. So either way, it should be like pretty close to before. So maybe we'll do something fun for our 3-year podcast anniversary. Can you guys believe that?
Yes. 3 years.
We've been doing this for 3
Most
years.
podcasts who start don't make it past, I don't remember the statistic, but we've made it 3 years. They don't make it past like a year.
They don't make it
like
past, I don't remember the statistic, but we're past that point. I don't know what it is, but I know we're past it.
I know we're past it because I remember hearing it and being like, well, we passed that marker. Because everyone wants to start a podcast until they realize how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
did you say podcast?
I might have. Parcast, we would love to be a part of your network.
Right? Like, please. That would just make our whole lives.
Max, what's his last name? I don't remember. Max something.
Yeah, I don't know. Anywho.
Anyway. If you could also, after that long ramble, give us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple or wherever you have a rating system where you can give us the highest rating possible, that would be great. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.